I once wrote about a kind of poverty that has nothing to do with money, seen through the eyes of a 19-year-old boy who carried it like a wound he could never quite name. His name was Arkady Dolgoruki, and his poverty was this. He was the illegitimate son of a nobleman named Versilov and a serf woman, raised at a careful distance from his own father, passed between relatives and boarding schools, never fully belonging to any family, any class, or any name he could claim without apology. He grew up watching other boys inherit their father's titles and certainty, while he inherited only a borrowed surname and a permanent low hum of shame about his own origins. He was mocked for it more than once, treated as a curiosity or an afterthought by people who held the very legitimacy he lacked, and every one of those small humiliations lodged itself somewhere in him, waiting for a shape to take. Out of that shame, sometime in his teenage years, Arkady built what he called his idea, and he treated it with the seriousness other young men reserve for religious conviction. He would become rich, not rich in the way other people wanted to be rich, for houses or carriages or fine clothing, but rich in the manner of Rothschild, the legendary banker whose name had become shorthand for a kind of wealth so total it purchased its own form of invisibility, a wealth that let a man need absolutely nothing from anyone ever again. I want you to sit with what Arkady actually wanted from this money, because it is not what you might expect from a young man obsessed with becoming wealthy. He did not fantasize about spending it. He barely fantasized about having it in any visible, enjoyable sense at all. What he wanted was the specific, cold power of self-sufficiency, the ability to walk through the world owing nothing to anyone, dependent on no one's goodwill, immune to the particular humiliation he had felt his entire childhood as a boy whose place in every room had to be granted rather than simply assumed. He imagined, quite specifically, living modestly even after acquiring his fortune, disguising his wealth, moving through society as an ordinary, unremarkable person who nonetheless knew, privately, that he could crush anyone who wronged him with a single gesture if he ever chose to. He even planned the discipline of it in detail, calculating that if he simply lived far below whatever income he earned, refusing every small upgrade in comfort that a rising fortune usually invites, he could accumulate wealth at a pace no ordinary spender could match, and he treated this plan of denial with an almost religious devotion, as though every sacrifice now was a down payment on a permanent future invulnerability. The value of the money was never in spending it. The value was in the silent internal knowledge of possessing a power he would likely never use, a permanent insurance policy against ever again being the dependent, humiliated child he had once been. This is such a specific and, I think, deeply human fantasy because it is not really about greed at all. It is about control, and more precisely, it is about a boy who had spent his entire life being controlled by other people's decisions, other people's charity, other people's timing, deciding that the only cure for that helplessness was to accumulate enough power that he would never again have to depend on anyone's mercy. There is a bitter irony running underneath the entire idea, one I placed there deliberately, because Arkady's dream of total independence was never actually about independence at all. It was about his father. Versilov haunted every version of this fantasy, a brilliant, magnetic, deeply flawed man who had never given Arkady the acknowledgement or stability a son needs from a father. And the Rothschild idea, stripped down to its real foundation, was Arkady's attempt to become a man so powerful that his father's failures could no longer touch him, so secure that the old wound of being unacknowledged and unclaimed would simply stop mattering. But a plan built entirely to numb an old wound rarely succeeds at numbing it, because the wound was never really about money in the first place, and no amount of theoretical future wealth could actually reach backward and repair a childhood spent feeling like an afterthought in his own father's life. Arkady spends much of the novel chasing fragments of this idea, gambling, scheming, drawn into other people's intrigues, always believing that the next clever maneuver will finally set the plan in motion, and always finding himself instead entangled more deeply in the very dependence and humiliation he was trying to engineer his way out of. He borrows money he cannot repay from the very people he wants to prove he no longer needs. He seeks approval, sometimes desperately, from the same father whose indifference supposedly no longer mattered to him. The harder he grasps for total self-sufficiency, the more enmeshed he becomes in exactly the tangled, uncertain human relationships his idea was designed to make unnecessary. And there is something almost comic, in a very sad way, about watching a boy build an elaborate fortress against needing anyone, while every single one of his actual choices reveals just how badly he still needs to be seen, forgiven, and claimed by the one person whose approval started this whole idea in the first place. I think about how many people quietly carry some version of Arkady's Rothschild idea without ever naming it so plainly, believing that enough money, enough success, enough hard-won security will finally purchase them freedom from needing anyone, from being hurt again, from ever having to feel as small and as powerless as they once felt in some formative wound of their own childhood. It is a seductive fantasy precisely because it offers a concrete, achievable-seeming solution to a problem that is not actually financial at all. You cannot out-earn an old humiliation. You cannot accumulate enough independence to erase the memory of once being entirely at someone else's mercy, because the wound lives in a part of you that money was never actually designed to reach. A person who grew up feeling unwanted may chase a career impressive enough that no one could ever look past them again, only to discover that professional respect, however genuine, does not touch the specific ache of having once gone unnoticed by the people who were supposed to notice them first. A person who grew up financially insecure may accumulate more wealth than they could spend in 3 lifetimes and still lie awake with the same anxious scarcity they carried as a child, because the number in the account was never actually the thing keeping them awake in the first place. Arkady eventually begins to understand slowly and painfully that what he actually wanted was never independence from people in general. It was reconciliation with one particular person, his father, and no fortune, however large, however cleverly disguised, was ever going to stand in for the acknowledgement he had wanted since he was a child. I want you to ask yourself honestly whether there is some version of the Rothschild idea quietly running underneath your own ambitions, some belief that enough success or money or self-sufficiency will finally heal a wound that actually has nothing to do with any of those things. The wound Arkady carried was never solved by wealth, because it was never really about wealth. It was about needing one specific person to finally see him. And no amount of power a person accumulates elsewhere can substitute for the very particular, very human thing they were actually trying to buy their way out of needing in the first place.